There is something deeply unsettling about a parent turning into a captor, a father, the very figure meant to provide protection, transforming into the architect of trauma. This is not a fictional tale or a scene from a horror film. This is a real-life nightmare that unfolded in the remote woods of Michigan. A man who once walked through town like any other father ended up doing something so vile, so twisted, that even the most experienced investigators were left shaken. This case is not just about violence. It is about manipulation, control, isolation, and the terrifying reality that monsters do not always hide under the bed. Sometimes, they are the ones tucking you in at night. It all began with a man named Daniel Warren. From the outside, Daniel appeared to be your typical rugged survivalist. A man with a deep distrust for modern society, a self-proclaimed prepper, and someone who believed the end of the world was always just around the corner. But the truth was, Daniel was far from a concerned father preparing for disaster. He was preparing something else entirely. Daniel had 3 daughters, Sarah, Emily, and Hannah. Their mother, Melissa, had left years ago under disturbing circumstances, but she never got the chance to take her girls with her. She tried multiple times, but Daniel made sure she could not. Legal loopholes, threats, and emotional manipulation kept the children locked in his orbit. Then, in early 2018, Daniel made a decision that would change everything. He pulled his daughters out of school, telling authorities they were being homeschooled. Neighbors started noticing fewer and fewer appearances from the girls, and soon they vanished completely. For months, there was no trace, no school attendance, no doctor visits, no online presence. The police received tips, but Daniel claimed he was exercising his parental rights and teaching his daughters off-grid. He used legal jargon to keep the authorities at bay. He insisted they were safe and simply living a simpler life in the wilderness. But what he meant by simple was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Eventually, someone spoke up. A former friend of Daniel who had once shared his prepping interests grew suspicious after Daniel severed all contact. He gave the police a tip. Daniel had built a hidden compound deep in the northern woods, completely isolated from society, and he might be holding his daughters there. Authorities launched a quiet search. It took weeks to even locate the camp. Hidden beyond service roads and only accessible by foot, the compound was surrounded by hand-built fences, booby traps, and warning signs. When they arrived, what they found was horrifying. The daughters, now aged between 12 and 17, were living in squalor, malnourished, dirty, and emotionally broken. They were found inside small wooden sheds without electricity, proper plumbing, or any contact with the outside world. They had not seen another human being besides their father in over a year, and what they told investigators next was even worse. Daniel had turned the compound into a place of psychological torture. Every day was regimented with survivalist drills, punishment routines, and forced readings from his bizarre, handwritten manifesto. He taught them that the world outside was evil, that the government would kill them, that their mother had abandoned them. That obedience was survival. He used fear as a weapon. He told them they would die if they left, but it was not just mind games. Daniel often resorted to physical punishment. If one of the girls questioned his rules, she was locked in a wooden crate for hours. If they cried, he would deny them food. He called it training, but it was abuse in its purest form. He isolated them completely. No mirrors, no books, no music, no dreams. He wanted to strip them of identity and erase who they were before. He told them that the past was poison and that he was their only salvation. But here's the part that stunned investigators the most. One of the daughters, the youngest Hannah, tried to escape. She managed to sneak out one night, barefoot in freezing temperatures, and made it a mile through the woods before Daniel found her. He dragged her back and, according to her own words, kept her tied up for 3 days without food or water. That attempt at freedom only made Daniel more paranoid. He reinforced the perimeter, added more traps, and even buried their identification documents in different locations. He was not just preparing for a societal collapse, he was preparing for war with anyone who dared come near them. At one point, Daniel even boasted that the girls would be better off dead than taken by the state. That is when authorities knew they had to act fast. But extracting the girls was no simple mission. The camp was too remote for vehicles. They needed a tactical team, psychological experts, and medical personnel ready on standby. It took a carefully orchestrated operation, carried out just before dawn. When law enforcement finally made it and Daniel was armed, he threatened to blow the place up, thankfully. After a tense standoff, he was apprehended without any shots fired. What followed was an avalanche of revelations. Diaries written by the eldest daughter, Emily, were discovered buried in waterproof containers. They detailed the daily horrors, the fear, and the constant hope that anyone would come find them. Emily had been secretly teaching her sisters how to read and write using scraps of paper and charcoal. She became the mother figure they no longer had. Her resilience, even in the face of hell, was what kept them alive. Daniel was charged with multiple counts of child abuse, unlawful imprisonment, endangerment, and psychological torture. But the prosecution dug deeper. They uncovered disturbing internet forums where Daniel had expressed extremist views. He believed in societal purification, a return to archaic values, and removing children from what he called the contaminated influence of modern life. The courtroom was packed the day Emily testified. Now 18, she stood before her father and recounted every detail. She spoke with strength, with clarity, and without hesitation. She said, "You were supposed to be our father, but you became our captor. You stole our childhood, but you will not steal our future." The trial ended with Daniel receiving a life sentence without the possibility of parole, but the scars he left behind cannot be measured by prison time alone. Here is the haunting part. Cases like this are not isolated. Every year, countless children are hidden from society by the very people meant to protect them. Parents who mask control as love, who weaponize fear, who build prisons out of ideology and convince their children it is a home. Emily, Sarah, and Hannah are now in recovery. Therapy is a long, painful road. They are learning to trust again, to laugh, and to dream. The state has given them new identities, and they are slowly building new lives with the support of a foster family who specializes in trauma care. But the story leaves us with questions we cannot ignore. How did the system fail them for so long? How was Daniel able to operate under the radar for years? How many more children are out there, living in silence, hidden from the eyes of society? It is easy to believe these things only happen in isolated woods or distant corners of the country. But the truth is, abuse often hides in plain sight. It thrives in secrecy, in legal gray areas, and in the silence of bystanders who choose not to speak up. This case is not just a story of horror, it is a reminder that vigilance is necessary, that every child deserves to be seen, heard, and protected, and that the most dangerous monsters are not always strangers. Sometimes they are family. There is one more detail, small but powerful. Investigators found a carved message on one of the wooden walls inside the camp. It read, "Someday we will be free." Those were Emily's words, scratched in with a nail, a whisper of hope in a place where hope was not allowed. And they did become free. That message now hangs framed in the office of one of the detectives who worked the case. A silent symbol that even in the darkest places, light can survive. And even in the grip of evil, the human spirit refuses to die. If this story disturbed you, it should. But let it also move you to awareness. Share it. Talk about it. Because silence is the greatest ally of abuse. If you suspect something is wrong with a child around you, speak up. You might be the only chance they have. For more true stories that reveal the darkest sides of human behavior and the resilience that follows, subscribe and stay tuned. We are not just here to tell stories, we are here to expose truth. And sometimes the truth is more terrifying than fiction.